Right. Hi, guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Judy L. Moore, and I am the Municipal Liaison for Christchurch, New Zealand for NaNoWriMo, as well as for Elsewhere, New Zealand. And we've been running this series of interviewing published writers within our local community of the various different genres. And today we're talking with Robinne Weiss, who writes children's fiction. We were going to have Michelle oh gosh, here we go again. McConaughey. We had this conversation just before we started recording, trying to figure out how do we pronounce her name. McConaughey. Oh, I'm so sorry, Michelle. So sorry. But she's unfortunately been really busy with the Tamariki Book Festival and with marking of assignments and stuff like that. So unfortunately, she was unable to make it today, but that's okay. Robin, we are so looking forward to hearing from you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is you write and why you love writing children's literature?
Well, actually write a lot of things, not just children's literature. When I sort of quit the day job to start writing, taking my writing seriously, my goal was to write nonfiction for adults. But I had this one story that had been knocking around the back of my head for years, and I thought, well, I'll just write this one story. It was a children's story. Just write this one story first. And I still haven't written that nonfiction for adults that I intended to, and that was 5 years ago or more. So yeah, I really enjoy writing for kids. When I started writing, I write mostly middle grade fiction, so for ages 8 to 13 or so. And when I started writing, my kids were of that age. And so it made sense. I was reading a lot of middle grade fiction alongside of them and whatnot. So I was sort of in that headspace of the 8-year-old kid. And I really enjoy it because 8 to 13-year-olds, they're actually really sophisticated people. They can understand a lot of stuff, but they haven't yet gotten the hormonal stuff going on yet. And so they haven't lost that sort of wide-eyed wonder about the world. A talking cockroach is still interesting and exciting. It's not too stupid yet. So I really like that because you can take an adventure and just run with it and have fun with it and be silly, and the kids will come along for you, with you.
Okay, so talking cockroaches, you've got one, don't you, in one of your books?
I do. Yes, his name is Perry, and he is a talking cockroach. Yeah, yeah. And there are
There's a
lots of talking
reason.
insects in that
Yeah, yeah.
book.
There is a reason you've got talking insects full stop, and we'll come to that later. But yeah, talking insects, I don't know about anybody else, but I think talking cockroach is like, hey, why not? Hey, it might be a psychotropic drug, but not a problem. I'll go along with it. That sounds cool. So what distinguishes children's fiction from, say, adult fiction? What are the defining characteristics?
Well, I think the obviously there's not adult themes in it. There's no sex. There's no, you know, um, but for kids, I think that idea that magic is real, and that real things are magical as well is really important in kids' books. You're dealing with issues of friendship. They're starting to, at the age that I write for, they're starting to just begin to sort of pull away from their parents. Their peer groups become more important. And so you're dealing with issues of friendship and that idea of just with the older age, getting into those 13-year-olds, dealing with that idea of finding your own identity and becoming who you are, not so much who your parents want you to be. So just exploring that, who am I and who are my friends? And I think, yeah, just that pure adventure, you're able to delve into that pure adventure that you can't really do with adult fiction. you can ignore, I mean, in kids fiction, you can get into the sort of feelings and whatnot, but you can just ignore all that stuff and have a rip-roaring adventure. And that's, and that's really cool. You can't, you, you can't really get away with that with fiction for older people. You've got to have some deeper stuff in there, but for kids fiction, you can just, ignore everything and have a rip-roaring adventure.
Cool. Okay, so why don't we just quickly, for those who don't know, let's just quickly go through the various different categories of children's literature. Because I know we've got, what was it? You've got picture books, chapter books,
So
middle
yeah,
grade.
yeah, they're picture books for the very young, and for getting into the older, they range up to 8 years old as well. Those picture books, chapter books are sort of very short, longish stories that for those kids who are just beginning to read more. They sort of range from around 6 years old, when the kids are really 6 to 8 years old, where the kids are really starting to read, but not up for a full novel. And then there's middle grade fiction, which can be getting up to novel length, to that 50-60,000 word area, although it tends to be more towards the 40,000 words, but it's very much a novel and structured like a novel.
Okay,
And then of course you got the young adult for the teenagers.
so young adult is classified children's literature? Because that was the one I'm
It
like, is it?
it
Is
is
it not?
classified as children's literature. Yeah, yeah.
It is. Okay, that's
So,
actually
but
cool.
there you start getting really. I mean, some of the young adult books are very mature in their content and the themes that they explore and whatnot. So there's sort of young adult, and then there's older young adult, and there's sort of grades of distinction there. In reality, everything from middle grade through to young adult or new adult, which is like sort of not a real popular category, but it's sort of for the 18 to 24 year olds. Everything in that is like shades of, uh, you know, there's not distinct delineations between them, because a lot of middle grade fiction leans towards young adult. Some young adult leans towards middle grade, and it's all sort of wishy-washy. So
Yeah. Okay, so YA is just this bizarre grade or level. Um, we can accept that. We can deal with that. But I was just sitting here thinking about things like what sort of ages. How can I rephrase this? Hang on, my brain's not thinking. Okay, someone was asking me before, your main character. Are there limits on the age of your main character for some of these books?
there are guidelines. I think with there are never any hard and fast rules. You can always break the rules if you do it well enough. But in general, you're aiming for main characters that are maybe a year or two older than your target audience. So, for example, in my middle grade books, my characters actually range in age from 8 to 13. They're often doing things older that kids in the real world wouldn't do. Well, maybe wouldn't do at all, riding dragons and whatnot. But but they they have adventures that are maybe in keeping with kids who are a little bit older than what they actually are. Um, but in general, kids are going to read up. They're going to be interested in characters who are a year or two older than where they're at right now. So if you're primarily geared towards 8 year olds, you want to write your characters, 10, 9 to 11 years old. So they're just a bit older than who you're aiming at.
Okay, I now just remembered what my question was before that I was just blanking out on. And I wanted to put some context for those who know the stories, but they don't necessarily know the categories that they fall into. Things like Dr. Seuss, Where would Dr. Seuss on the spectrum be?
So, well, Dr. Seuss ranges quite a lot because he wrote some picture books that are really for teenagers, to be honest. The Places You'll Go is really aimed at teenagers. Um, and and yet it's a picture book. So again, like
Yeah,
I said, there's no hard and fast rules. If you're good enough, you can break all the rules. Um, so, and then of course, there's some Dr. Seuss that's really aimed at kids who are just in that learning phonemes stage. They're just learning, that there are blends of sounds that letters make and stuff like that. So, he wrote for a
Mr.
huge
Brown
range.
can moo.
Yeah, he wrote for a huge range, even though his style was always the same. It was always the picture book, and it was always a very similar style, similar rhyme structure and whatnot. But um, he his content was aimed at a wide range of kids. So yeah.
Cool.
And
Okay,
I've
what
read
about
picture books.
C.S. Lewis?
Um, he was writing before any of these categories were were in place.
But they tend to be classified, though, children's books.
They
I'm
do,
wondering if I would classify them as an upper middle grade.
yeah. I would certainly, because they're long and there's some sophisticated ideas in there. The characters tend to be in that young teen age range, 11 to 13. So yeah, I would definitely categorize them as upper middle grade.
And I
Um,
think I would say the same with Frank L. Baum, the Wizard of Oz. I think I would
yeah,
say the same with that as well.
yeah.
But again, like you said, they were written in a time that's a completely
And
different time
then,
period, but
yeah, it's a
hey.
totally different time, and a time when writers didn't think about, well, what category is this going to be in on Amazon and or on the bookshelves, honestly. And we think as writers, we think very differently now. We think, we've created these categories, which are they're they're largely artificial, you know, because you don't just suddenly turn a switch at age 8 and become a middle grade reader. I know 6-year-olds who love my middle grade books, and I know 13-year-olds who love my middle grade books. Uh, And there's a continuum. It's not a switch that you just turn
Mm.
on, and as soon as a child reaches age 8, they're ready for this book or whatever. And I think there was less categorizing of readers back in the day when some of those earlier authors that are sort of the classics, when they were writing, they didn't have those constraints that we put on ourselves. Um,
I think that probably segues beautifully into talking about the publishing industry with children's. What has been some of your experiences in publishing children's fiction?
well, I'm an indie publisher, so I'm self-publishing my books. Um, and so I can't really speak to the traditional publishing scene for middle grade fiction. Um, I would say, from what I've seen, it's one of the hardest ages to be an indie publisher for, at least the middle grade, because marketing is so difficult, because your buyer is not your reader. It's mom and grandma and grandpa who are buying for the children. So you have to be able to attract the adult buyer with a book that the child reader will be interested in. And that's a I haven't gotten it. I'm lousy at marketing. I struggle with that all the time, and I know there are some people who have managed, who do really well, but it is a struggle because you are marketing to someone who isn't going to read your book.
What are some of the marketing tactics that you have found to work and not work? Let's go with the ones that
Don't
don't
work.
work. Let's go with some of
No,
those.
I don't. Honestly, I don't know. Marketing is the area where I'm least competent, I think. Um, it's it's something that I'm always learning about, and um, yeah. So honestly, I have no advice.
No. Okay, that's okay. That's cool. Not a problem. Right. There's a question that's just been popped through into the chat for me to take a look at. So this is all cool. We're going to come back to some of your writing. So do you have to explain, so coming back to your talking cockroach book, do you have to explain in a book like that why or how they developed this magic to
Oh,
talk? Is that even
well,
necessary?
it is to a certain extent, because kids are going to want to know why or how they do it. And so actually, I don't explain it fully in the book. I have it all written out. I know exactly how it works. And it's alluded to in the story, so that the kids know that this is something that here's basically how it works. Um, and the key with my talking insects is not everyone can hear them. And so the main character is able to hear them because she pays attention, and she never grew out of her, like apparently a lot of kids can hear them, because they haven't learned that they're not supposed to be able to hear them. And she never really grew out of that. She just, yeah, she talks to insects. Um, so um, so yeah, it is explained in the book, but the
That
details are not there, because the kids don't want to know that. I need to know, as an author, I need to know the details. I need to make sure that it's all internally consistent and whatnot. But the kids just need to vaguely know how it works. They're gonna, they'll say, "Oh yeah, of course, insects talk."
I suppose, like, so in that idea with the magic, that theme of how we grow out of magic, I think I've seen quite a few
Yeah.
stories that play on that. Even the movie Mr. Megorium's Wonder
Mm-hmm.
Emporium, even that plays on that
Mm-hmm.
theme, how we get to a certain point and we just no longer believe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's so cool that you're playing on that theme. And kids just love that.
Yeah.
Or at least I think they do. It's fine. I, one of the things that I did notice about some of your books is that you are printing dyslexia-friendly books.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that actually means?
So people with dyslexia obviously struggle to read, and there are ways that we can help make it easier for them. And so using a larger font, bigger line spacing, using cream colored paper rather than stark white, using fonts that are easier to read. Um, all those things help. And it doesn't mean that it's not difficult for people with dyslexia to read. It's always going to be difficult, and I think probably audiobooks are are even better. But it's relatively simple to publish a dyslexia-friendly print version of a book. And I work with a lot of kids with dyslexia, and so it seemed to me it was a no-brainer for me to publish a dyslexia-friendly edition. It takes very little time in the grand scheme of things. It takes very little time to format the book as a dyslexia-friendly version and get it out there in that version as well. So it's just something that it seemed right to do. So
Do you publish all of your books now in in multiple formats, or just the dyslexia-friendly
both
ones?
formats, yeah. So all my well, yeah. I don't All my children's books are in dyslexia-friendly formats, as well as as
traditional
well as
sort
an
of.
ordinary. Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
To be, I mean, so you were talking about that cream paper. This is just a side question because I
Hmm.
remember seeing it in a conversation group about with indie publishers as to whether fiction should be on cream or white. And if I sit down and I think about it, every single one of the books on my bookshelf, even the ones that are traditionally published, they're all on cream. I don't think
Mm.
I've ever seen a fiction put in white paper. Have you?
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't really thought of it, about it much, but I seem to recall that when I was deciding on my first book whether it was going to be on cream or white, I had a look at my kids' bookshelves and I chose white because most of them were white.
Huh.
But that was some time ago too, so it might be different, I don't know.
Huh.
Um,
We might have to
either
do some
way, it's,
investigation on that.
yeah, yeah. Either way, I personally like white. Like I like the brightness of a white page. Um, but like I said, from the dyslexia-friendly editions, I do use cream paper because it's been the research shows that it is easier for people with dyslexia to read if it's on cream colored paper. So
Yeah. Cool. So it does. I mean, I just had that sort of thing about because I know nonfiction. Almost every single book that I've got that's nonfiction is on white paper, but every
mhm.
single one of them on my shelves for fiction is in cream. So I'm like,
Now I'm going to
interesting.
have to go to my bookshelves and look.
Okay, so now we've had another question come through into the chat, which is fantastic. Um, do you feel that writing children's books actually helps keep your own inner child alive?
Well, yeah, it does. Although I have to say that I work with children on a daily basis as well, so that's probably more important to that because I'm actually spending most of my days with children. Um, but yeah, absolutely, exercising that sense of imagination, exercising those flights of fancy, that has got to be really important because if you're not practicing that, if you're not exercising those muscles, those imagination muscles, then of course they're going to atrophy. And I think they do tend to atrophy in adults unless we make an effort to keep imagining and keep, act,
So we
acting
writers
and,
are
and
are
and
are
thinking like
well
kids.
suited for this.
Yeah.
We writers are going to be great because we are always
Hmm.
imagining things and we're always doing that. So we're probably going to always have that. Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Right. You, I know, have been working on something big. It's why part of the reasons why Michelle is not with us today. Tell us what's going on tomorrow in Christchurch.
So yeah, so tomorrow at Turanga in the Christchurch's Central Library, the Tamariki Book Fest is happening, and it's running from 10 to 4. We've got a whole bunch of local authors and illustrators coming. We're going to be doing all throughout the day. There are workshops, writing workshops and illustration workshops going on. We'll have readings going on and whatnot. But what's really cool about the Tamariki Book Fest is that it's not a bunch of authors sitting behind desks piled with their books or sitting behind tables piled with their books.
Mm.
Um, we really focus on what visitors to the book fest are going to be doing. And so every single author has developed interactive, fun activities for kids to do during the day. So we've got a whole bunch of crafts, we've got singing, we've got drama, we've got painting going on. There's all sorts of stuff going on. It's very much an interactive sort of thing. It's a place where kids can come and do fun things with authors, with children's authors. And so it's quite different in that sense, in that you're not going to see any of us sitting down. You're not going to be separated from any of us by a table. We're not going to be looking at you over books, piles of books. There will be books, plenty of books there to buy, but we'll be doing stuff. So yeah, so it's a lot of work for all of us, all of the authors who are involved. Both Michelle and I are on the board of the Tamariki Book Festival, so we're involved in the organization of the whole thing, and we're also participating authors. So we have sort of this double whammy of work to do to get ready for tomorrow. So it's been pretty full on for the last, for the last year. We've been planning it for the last year, and the last week or so have been really full on.
Yeah, I've seen the program. So correct me if I'm wrong, the website is tamarikibookfestival.co.nz. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you just go and take a look at the program that's there. There's so many activities, some amazing talent coming through. I mean, Jim, I can't even, Jim Callahan. Oh gosh, there's another one. I can't remember his name. Sorry, Jim. But he does really funny songs.
Yeah.
Cannot stop laughing whenever I hear one of his little quirky little songs that gets played.
Yep.
So it's
he'll
going to
be he'll be there singing with kids, and yeah, it's going to be an awesome day. We're very excited to be doing this in conjunction with the Christchurch City Libraries. They've been amazing, and of course Turanga is such an awesome space, and just to have that flow between the book festival and the library and whatnot is really neat.
Yeah.
So we're really looking forward to it.
And according to the website, you're in the TSB space, which is in the first floor, which is the same floor as the kids' playground right at the other end.
Exactly.
So
yeah. So that whole floor, and in fact, and we've got a scavenger hunt for the day that will take kids not only through the Tamariki Book Fest, but gives them some things to find on that same floor in the library. So it'll take them all over the place. So. Yeah, so
that is going to be so cool.
There's just so much to do, it's going to be an awesome day. It's going to be a great day, and so for anyone who's keen, anyone who has kids, it's a great chance to come up and give the kids something fun to do, and also pick up some Christmas gifts along the way too. Because you can get the kids doing something and then quickly go over and buy some books. So it's a great way to support our local authors as well.
Is there any charge to enter this?
No, the event is free. The workshops, we are sort of asking that you might give a donation for going into the workshops, because they're quite intense, and our authors who have developed those workshops have worked really hard on those. All the donations go to making next year's Tamariki Book Fest even bigger and better, and all the book sales. The Tamariki Book Festival is not taking a cut of the book sales, so all that goes to the authors. So when you buy a book at the Tamariki Book Fest, all that money goes to the author, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. All right, so let's think about just building our platforms. And so if we're children's writers, I know in the likes of Jim, he's creating interactive environment. He's got the YouTube that he does. How important is doing things like building those interactive sites or interactive books, or how important is that today?
Well, I think that anything that you can do that helps you make that personal connection with your readers, and when we talk about children's book, with your readers' parents, is really important, because it's about making those personal connections, making your readers and your buyers feel like they know you. So anytime you can make those connections, do those interactive things, I think it's really important, because it's all about those personal connections. Um, yeah, yeah.
I suppose that makes sense. All right, so I have an interest in platforms in general for writers. I hope you know that. But one of the things that I say is that for a writer, for a children's writer, going onto something like Twitter is actually a waste of time because the environment, you're not going to connect. Going to Facebook, maybe,
Yeah.
because as you said before, you know, your buyer is the parents and grandparents, not the reader, which is such a shame. So connecting on Facebook might be a better way of doing things. But I say, you know, it's better to actually connect into your local community than it is to possibly connect to the internet community. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the internet community is obviously huge. And so there is some benefit to having that wider audience. But I think too, you have to think about, well, who is your audience? You know, my Dragon Slayer books are set in New Zealand. And so to be honest, my primary audience is Kiwi kids. And so for me, you know, those local connections, those local um, uh, platform opportunities are really important, because to me, those are the most important kids. Those are the kids that I definitely want reading my books. The international kids who buy my book, that's great. That's awesome. But they're not my focus, you know? And I'll do my best to connect with them, but they're not my focus. My focus is the local kids. Um, so yeah, for me, that's really important. But I think I mean, you need to look at where is your audience? You know, where are your readers hanging out, and where are your readers' parents hanging out, and go there wherever that is. And so if you really want to market internationally, obviously you're going to have to do some internet. Um, you have to develop a platform online, because that's the only way you're going to reach those people sitting out here in the middle of the South Pacific. Um, but if you're focused on New Zealand, then yeah, absolutely. It's especially in New Zealand, I think, where everybody knows everybody else. You need to get out there and meet people and talk to people, and yeah.
2 degrees of freedom. That's
Yeah,
basically what we
exactly.
say.
Yeah.
So for those who are watching this from the States, in New Zealand, we tend to talk about this concept of it's everyone in New Zealand's 2 degrees of separation. So we may not know the one person, but we know somebody they know. And that's how it all, it's just like, wow, we're such a small community here because of our size, to put it blunt. All right, Robin, what is your writing routine like? I mean, we're in the middle of NaNoWriMo here, and we're just, so writers are going through and working on their work. What's your routine?
So just, to put it out there, I'm not participating in NaNoWriMo because I
Your
write year
Tamariki
round.
Book Festival, that's your
Well, there's
focus.
that too. But because I write year round, it doesn't make sense for me, to be honest, because I have a routine and my routine works for me. And so breaking my routine to participate in something that, to be fair, would only suck me onto the internet anyway. To see how everyone's doing, and all that stuff. It's like, I just, for me, it's not the way I work. um, but I work part-time, so on my days when I'm working the day job, so to speak, um, I don't get a lot of uh, quality writing time in, but I have snatches of time because I carpool to work with the rest of my family. I have some waiting time, both in the morning before I start and in work, and in the afternoons after I finish. And I use that time to do the business of writing, because it's not good quality time, but it's time nonetheless. So I do all the things that I don't enjoy doing during those time frames, those little bits and bobs. I
So what do
do
you classify the business of writing?
marketing, dealing with cover design and stuff like that. Things that are not the actual writing, basically. So I'm doing my doing my books or whatever, during those down times, just those little times that aren't quality writing time that I can't get into the flow of writing. I do all the little tasks that are involved with writing. So when things are going well, I get all that stuff done in those little dumb times when I'm working in the car, sitting in the car working, or I'm, sitting at a cafe working or whatever, when I can't be at my desk writing. And then on the 2 days of the work week that I don't work the day job, I start by about 6:30 in the morning, and I work straight through until 5. And so those are my really intense writing days. And I've got the house to myself and got quiet and focus, and I can just plow through the writing during those 2 days.
Cool. How do you measure your productivity? I'm just curious. I'm curious because I measure mine in hours. So I'm curious how you measure yours.
No, I do. When I'm working on a first draft of a novel, I measure in words. But obviously, you're not always working on a first draft of a novel. I create for myself quarterly plans. So every 4 months or every 3 months, I have a plan for the 3 months, and I go through that plan, and that's my measure of productivity, is whether I've accomplished what's on my plan. And those quarterly plans take me through, they keep me moving, they keep me headed towards a goal. And as long as I'm making progress towards those goals, that's progress.
I might have to adopt that because I'm a list maker. I have my to-do lists, and I have set goals, and I set monthly goals, but I like the idea of having a quarterly plan. Ooh.
My quarterly plan for this, and this is the end of the year, so it's actually quite short, and Tamariki Book Fest, so there's not a lot on there. Usually it's a full page, but basically, I've got goals, I've got my goals, and then I've got the specific steps that I need to do to accomplish that goal listed in there, and then I have deadlines. I put deadlines for myself, and then a column that I can tick them off when I accomplish them, so that, yay, I can do that celebrating in that column.
It's so satisfying to tick off things off the to-do list, isn't it?
And then
sometimes I think
and
I just add something just so I can tick it off.
I definitely do that. And then I have a column for notes. So if I don't complete a goal, I can write in there notes to myself, either justifying why I didn't complete it, or just saying, oh, you need to put this on next month, or next quarter's goal, or this isn't going to work at all. This was a stupid goal. And I'm never going to do this again. This was dumb. So I can put those notes in, so I can go back and look at them. And I'll tell you, I've been doing this since the early 1990s. I've been using quarterly plans since the early 1990s, when I was required to do them for my job. And I found them really useful. And I can go back. There have been times when I feel like, oh, I haven't accomplished anything this year. I haven't done anything. You can go back. I can go back to those quarterly reports and say, actually, I have accomplished this, 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 and this. And here are the reasons why I didn't accomplish what I'm feeling so bad about. So it's, so you can go back, and it's actually quite affirming to see what you've managed to get done, even though, you come to the end of the year and think, oh crap, I haven't done anything this year. Those quarterly plans are really helpful to me.
Okay, that's it. No, you're explaining that. I think that's going to fit with my personality. I think that's it. Come next year, because my plan for the rest of this year, I'm That said, I know exactly what I have to do for December and the rest of
Mhm.
November. There is nothing else that's going to fit in that schedule. But I think, yeah, no. After hearing you describe that, quarterly plans, here it comes, because I'm never going to get anything done if I don't. Because, like I said, I've been doing daily and weekly goals, and I have extended it to month, but I'm thinking month might be too short of a time frame.
Yeah, so I have the quarterly plan, and then I have, and then I have sort of what I need to get done by the end of the month, what I need to get done this week, what I need to get done today. So I end up with lists upon lists, but that quarterly plan is the longer term goals. And I find, 3 months is good for,
Okay, I'm adopting it. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm adopting that. That sounds like a plan that will work for me. It may not work for some others, because I know some others are not, they're not list makers.
Mhm.
But I think for me, I think that would work. So I'm going to adopt that. Yeah, no. So other than the Tamariki Book Festival, what are you working on now?
I have just finished the first draft of a young adult novel, actually, which would be my
Ooh.
first YA novel that, well, I've written two other YA novels, but they're in the rubbish bin. This
The
is the first
metaphorical
one.
drawer.
Exactly. This one is the first one that I feel like has potential, and with some work will become, publishable. But um, so yeah, so I'm working on the first round of edits on that at the moment. So hopefully gonna get it to my first reader uh, by the end of the year is my goal.
Awesome. That sounds
So,
cool. I just want you to expand on that thought, though. This is just a general thing for writers as well. But how do you decide if a manuscript idea is working and it's not? How do you make that decision? How do you know?
well, if I'm in the middle of it and I realize that, there are times when I plot out a novel and I think the plot is solid and I think it's good. And then I actually start writing it and it's like, nah, there's just gaping holes in this and whatnot. And sometimes I can see how to fix them. Other times I'm like, you know what? I'm actually just not interested. What I've set up here is maybe interesting, but not don't like my characters or don't like, it's just not interesting enough. And I just scrap it. If I'm not interested, then of course my readers aren't going to be interested. So I think there's a gut feeling. Um, and I've learned to trust that more and more. You send something to the editor and you get it back, and when there's no surprises, when you think, yeah, I see that, yeah, I kind of felt that too, it's like you realize, yeah, your gut is really, really useful. And so you know if you're constantly getting feedback that you sort of knew that, then you get a feel for what actually works and what doesn't work. So yeah.
I think that's probably all writers can just
Mm,
learn from that. Just learn to trust your instincts.
yeah.
Because as you said, if you're not into it, your reader's not going to be into it. You
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
feel
And
it.
I don't know, I don't even remember who said it, but somewhere along the line, some writer in a workshop or whatnot said, about they were talking about specific scenes, and I think it's important for scenes and also for whole books, is like, if you're writing and you're struggling with a scene, um, that you just can't seem to write it and whatnot, it's probably because the scene is boring and you probably don't need it. And I've actually started doing that, with individual scenes. It's like, oh, if I'm struggling writing, then it's probably because the scene is boring, and I move on to the next scene that's exciting. And oftentimes I could just get rid of that scene that I was struggling with, because really it was boring. Same thing goes with books, with entire manuscripts. If I'm struggling, it's probably because it's boring. And I can just get rid of it.
Well, I know for myself, I was really struggling with a manuscript. I had made the mistake of plotting it out to the nth degree. That I'm not a plotter. Sorry,
Mhm.
guys, I'm not a plotter. From the sounds of it, you are, um, but I'm not. And I plotted this thing to the nth degree, thinking this is what I needed to do, and it sucked the joy out of it. It was so boring, and it's like, nah, threw that plot away and went back to the basics, went back to the beginning and started again. And then suddenly it wrote. I was able to
Mm.
write it.
Mhm.
And yeah, trust the instincts.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So is there any advice that you can give to writers wanting to pursue children's fiction? Is there anything?
Mm. I'd say, the standard stuff, read within the genre. So you sort of get a feel for the language, for the length, for the concepts and ideas that belong in that genre, in the middle grade or children's fiction. And yeah, I think too, show your writing to kids, have kids read your writing. When I do, my beta readers are generally half kids within the age range that I'm aiming for. And they see things that adults don't. I've learned a lot about what interests them and what doesn't interest them from their feedback. And so that was really, really helpful. Um, and even now, I'll run things by my students, little things, and say, which do you like better, this or this, and stuff like that. Because it's great to have that connection with kids, because it helps me understand where they're coming from. So spending time with children is really important to being able to write for them.
So how do you connect with some of the other writers of children's writers? Because you and Michelle obviously have connected, but what are some of the other networks that children's writers can connect with?
So there are online networks. There's a fair number of online networks of children's writers, and a lot of those are international, which is kind of cool because you get lots of perspectives and you get to talk to lots of people. So I'm connected in with a bunch of different online networks. Um, yeah, you tend to find them wherever they are. I don't know. Um, I haven't made a concerted effort, to be honest, to find specific New Zealand um, middle grade writers, but they just, we tend to do the same things, and we like the same stuff, and we tend to somehow gravitate towards one another.
Well, I know in Christchurch we've got the Children's Literature Hub,
Mhm.
that is
Yeah.
run by, it's an offshoot of the New Zealand Society of
And yeah.
Authors,
Mhm.
and I can't remember who runs it.
Is it Heather?
I think it's Heather McQuillan, isn't
Heather
it?
McQuillan. Yeah, I think so.
So many names.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I'll make sure I put some links into that group, in the the liner notes for this show, which will be pretty awesome. Um, you mentioned your nonfiction.
Mhm.
You've also got a nonfiction children's book.
I do. I do.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So when I've got to give you a little history. I ran something called the Bugmobile for about 10 years here in Canterbury. Um, I've got a master's degree in entomology, with a focus on teaching about insects. And so I started up a business of science outreach to schools focused on insects and other arthropods. When I closed that business in order to write full time, uh, a lot of teachers asked me to. I was still getting lots of calls. I still get calls for people who want the Bugmobile. And so teachers were like, well, what else, what else is out there? What can I do with my kids? And so with their encouragement, I created a teacher's guide to using insects in the classroom But then kids wanted it because it's got lots of cool bug stuff in it, information and stuff in it. So kids started asking about this book, and they wanted to buy this book, and it's really not appropriate. It's not written for kids. It's not, it has lots of classroom activities in it that the kids weren't going to get anything else. So what I did is I took the cool information out of that book, made it kid friendly, presented it in a kid friendly way, and created a companion called Backyard Bug Watcher. And it's specifically focused on New Zealand insects, things that kids can do and can learn about New Zealand insects. And other arthropods, not just insects. So I created that sort of, as it sort of flowed out of my work with teachers, and then everything's sort of related. It all comes back to the same stuff. But,
yeah. And of course I'm assuming your other nonfiction, or the one project that you said that started you all on this path, I'm assuming that's also associated to entomology?
No, it's not actually.
Oh, it wasn't!
I have been blogging for years about sort of, I hate to even use this word because it has lots of weird connotations, but sort of homesteading. Because I live on a lifestyle block, and I, for many years, had dairy goats and was producing all the family's foods through the vegetable garden and the dairy goats. And so I really wanted to do a book that combined, that was pretty much about food, but about growing and making and eating beautiful, lovely food that you've produced yourself. And I still want to do that. I still want to do that. And I'm thinking more and more that it's going to end up on some quarterly plan in 2021, because I really still want to do that. So yeah, but it's all about, part of the problem is that as a writer, you want to build a brand. And I've sort of dabbled in lots of different things. I've got nonfiction, I've got fiction, I've written for adults, I've written for kids, and it doesn't help me build a brand. And so on the one hand, I feel like, if I'm going to build a brand, I've got to stick to a genre, I've got to go with it. On the other hand, I love writing diverse stuff. I get bored if I have to write the same thing for the same audience all the time. And so, so I want to, for me personally, I want to write in lots of different genres for lots of different people. But from a marketing standpoint, that's a foolish thing to do. So it's been hard to sort of justify it, but I really think I want to do it.
Oh no, I want that book. Can I have that book? And I had to admit, with how crazy 2020 had become, we could have used that book.
Well, I know, and that's what I realized, is that I really should have written it 5 years ago when I decided I wanted to write it. But
and you could put the talking cockroach into it too.
Oh, I'm not sure that would work.
Or maybe some other talking bug, like talking bees. Okay, no. Sorry, I'm just being silly now. Sorry, apologize. Okay. Right, one of the things that we've been doing, hang on, I'm just going to take a quick look to see if there were any questions that I've missed. All right, so we have one question that's come through about your inspiration for your stories, because you've got the Dragon Slayer.
Right, so
where do you get your inspiration from?
My husband is an amazing source of writing prompts, basically. He has an incredible imagination, but he doesn't have this sort of, he's not a writer, and he doesn't want to write these stories. He just, every couple days he'll say, you should write a book about, some of those ideas are really good. And I think, ooh, yeah, I can do that. So that's one source of inspiration. But then, what I do, I'll take those weird, crazy, off the wall ideas that he'll come up with, and I like to weave science into them. I spent nearly 30 years teaching about the natural world, and so it's something that I love to bring into my fiction as well. So, for example, my dragons, although I've put dragons in New Zealand, they are ecologically New Zealand dragons. They could not have evolved anywhere else in the world. They have adaptations that are specific to the habitats in which they live here in New Zealand. So, I've woven in science concepts and ecology concepts into this mythical creature, so that they make sense from a biological and an ecological standpoint here in New Zealand. So that's sort of,
That's cool.
where my
That's so
inspirations
cool.
come from.
There's another random here question I must have missed when I didn't see it before, but that's okay. When we were talking about reaching out to the local communities and doing things like that, somebody was asking, do you suggest doing things like reading at the local libraries or the schools?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I think one of the things I know in other places other than New Zealand, a lot of children's authors, they make most of their money by going around to schools. And that's an important part of their business model, is that going around to schools. Here in New Zealand, it's a little bit harder because we don't have the sort of population. I suppose probably if you were in Auckland, you might have the population density there to be going around to schools regularly and making a fair bit of your money through those school visits. But definitely, even here in New Zealand, I think it's really important to get out there. If you're writing for kids, get out there in the schools, because again, you're building that fan base,
Recognition.
that you need. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've caught all the questions that have come through. And if there are any other questions that are coming through, don't worry, people, they are visiting us. I'll still get them, but let's have a little bit of fun for the moment. Okay, we're going to do something that I call the lightning round. So we're just going to have little random questions. Okay, you ready?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Question number 1, coffee, tea, or wine?
Coffee.
How black is that coffee?
Black and strong.
Dare I ask, how many cups a day?
2. Only 2.
Only 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not too bad.
No.
I know some people that have a few more and they're a bit jittery by the end of the day.
Well, the thing is, coffee's first. You say coffee, tea, or wine. I drink all 3. But coffee is morning. It's the key one. Tea is for afternoon. And then wine is for the evening. But with writing, coffee and writing go together.
Okay, fair enough. I get it. Okay, here we go. Cake or ice cream?
And cake and ice cream.
Hey, you are after my own heart. Yes. Gotta have both. My waistline does not like having both, but I've got to have both. Okay, here we go. What about chocolate or potato chips? Ooh, she's having to think about this one.
It's in part because I'm not big on either one, to be honest. I would say probably chocolate, but
Okay, well,
then neither
let's
one
rephrase
is
the question.
terrible
Let's rephrase
weakness
it.
on my
Sweet or
part.
savory?
Sweet. Yeah, sweet.
Okay. What is the most bizarre food you've ever had?
Actually consumed or been served?
Well, why not both?
Well, I for a couple of years, I lived and worked in the Republic of Panama in a very rural community, and I worked at the school a couple of days a week. And they would do the parents would do a lunch for the kids one day a week, and I was served, I was served this bowl of soup in which there was a child's hand looking, looking up from the bowl, from the soup at me. At least that's what it looked like. It was actually a chicken foot, but it looked exactly like a baby's hand coming up out of the soup.
Please tell me you didn't scream, because I would
I
have.
couldn't. Well, I knew that I knew that they had chicken feet in the soup, so I figured that's what it was. But I was like, I cannot eat this. I cannot eat this. I'm vegetarian to begin with, but I would have eaten it if it hadn't looked so awful. But one of the kids was like looking over at my soup. I'm like, you gonna eat that? I was like, no, you have it. So I gave it away.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah,
No, that would have been
that's up there.
bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
That, ooh, yuck. All right, so somebody's asked, well, since you don't like chocolate, what's your favorite type of sweet anyway?
Well, I should clarify that. I it's not that I don't like chocolate, is that ever since I started into perimenopause, it makes me feel ill when I eat just like a chocolate bar or whatever. I love chocolate cake and stuff like that. I can handle it in that form. It's just the dense sort of chocolate stuff that doesn't work for me. My
Okay.
favorite sweet. So I'm a huge baker. If you go onto my website, you search food on my website, my blog is filled with cake, cupcakes, and stuff. And so basically anything, any baked good is my favorite baked good. I made Oreos yesterday, so.
You can make Oreos?
Oh my God, can you make Oreos? And they're not bad. And I'm pretty sure there's a recipe on my blog.
There goes my waistline.
So yeah. So, anything. I'm a big baker. My house is never without baked goods. So yeah, anything.
Okay. Okay, no, seriously, there just went my waistline. Right. Okay. Favorite author?
I have to choose one.
Yes, unfortunately, you do. No, you don't. What are some of the favorite authors that you
Um,
love?
um, I love Isabella Allende. I read her stuff in both Spanish and English. Really love the Spanish. She's just um, really lyrical prose.
So you obviously love reading stuff outside of your genre too.
I do. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason, yeah, I could never write as well as Allende, so I would never even try to write within her genre. So because I would always fall short. So yeah, there's no point in trying.
But you can still enjoy it, so that's good.
Absolutely.
Okay, paperback or ebook?
Yes.
Oh, you're like me. It's got to have both.
I don't, I like them both. They both serve their purposes. Sometimes I want a paperback. Sometimes I really appreciate that I'm sitting waiting for a child after school and I've got my phone with 80 books on it and I can just choose a book and read. So yeah, I like them both. I appreciate both.
Yeah, I think I'm the same for exactly the same reason.
Mm.
It just makes it so much easier to carry a book in your pocket.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Does anyone have any last questions that they would like to ask Robinne about her writing, about children's literature, about the Tamariki Book Festival tomorrow? Hint, hint, go and enjoy the Tamariki Book Festival tomorrow.
Bring your kids, your grandkids.
Yes, yes, go and have fun. All right, so if there are no further questions, where can we find out more information about you and your books?
I see that Judy has put my website on the chat. You can go there. You can find out about all my books and stories there.
That's
and
at robinweiss.com.
robinweiss.com, yes. And you can, and all my books are available on pretty much all the online retailers. So go to your favorite retailer and type in my name, and you should come up with my books too. So, but you can get links right from my website as well to those sales pages.
It's always the easiest thing sometimes. Just
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can find a recipe for Oreo cookies.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to be going and finding that sort of like rather soon. There goes my waistline. That's okay. Okay, we can cope with this. Right. So next week, so obviously tomorrow is the Tamariki Book Festival. And for those who are taking part in our NaNoWriMo chat room stuff, tomorrow we have a Ask the Editor session that's in the chat. It's not a Zoom thing. However, I think if I remember rightly, I saw yet another one of these writing events. Let me just bring up my calendar. Yes, I did. The writing crawl. It was so popular last week, they've decided to do it again. And it is again tomorrow as well. So that, be sure if you want to take part in the writing crawls to actually take part in, to subscribe and click the confirmation links. But next week we're going to be interviewing 2 nonfiction writers, except my, dare I say it, Emmy Lou James and Anne Bell Feinstein are conspiring against me. But we're going to be interviewing Sean Welsh and Beth Beamish about nonfiction, and they're wanting to put me on the panel for nonfiction as well, because I also write nonfiction. So, so yeah, so it looks like I might be one of the interviewees next week as well. But that's going to be next week. So let's just have some fun, and thank you very much, Robin. And I hope Tamariki Book Festival goes really well for you guys.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
It will.
It will. Awesome.
All right. Thank you guys, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.